For a WWE wrestler, the road to the top can be rough. Even a surgeon on the mat or a natural entertainer on the mic has to get over, and in today's post-kayfabe era, that is far easier said than done. Fans, even casual ones, are now aware that everything they see in the ring is predetermined and choreographed, which makes it that much harder to emotionally invest the viewers in the storylines. Even if said wrestler does manage to get over, they don't want to win too much, lest they are perceived as a hand-picked champion. Hello, Roman Reigns. Nor do they want to lose too much, because then they look like a loser and a buried has-been. So the audience are a tough crowd, but even if they cooperate, WWE itself can be the worst hindrance of all. It's not for a lack of trying. There have been several times that the company has helped wrestlers in the worst possible ways, or scripted awful ideas that make their once promising superstars look stupid. Gimmicks and characters are fragile to begin with, and when a wrestler is forced to change the very things that got them over in the first place, it's usually not a good idea. If it isn't broken, then it's probably not a good idea to fix it. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 8 times WWE creative ruined a wrestler's gimmick. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to stay notified. Ding, ding, done. Number 8, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy was pegged as a future world champion from his debut year, and he had everything. The looks, the old school wrestling style, the unbelievable promos, and that indefinable it factor that characterizes all great superstars. But then he got drafted to Raw, and it all went to hell. Vince thought that Kennedy was too funny to be a heel, and asked him to change his promos, stop chewing gum, and erase everything that made him a SmackDown star. Vince wanted clear good versus evil, no tweeners. And whenever Kennedy was funny, Vince thought that it blurred the line too closely. Pretty soon, Mr. Kennedy would march to the ring and not even reach for the microphone. His biggest weapon, which was his mouth, had been taken away from him, and he was now a generic babyface instead of a funny heel. Combine that with his ill-timed injuries, his wellness suspension, and an unfortunate bump in with Randy Orton, and Mr. Kennedy was on borrowed time. After 2 years of false starts and stops, he was featured endeavored in 2009. Number 7, Lance Storm. Let's be real, Lance Storm is not the most charismatic guy in the world. Kind of stoic. But if you're a booker, there are ways around that. You could focus on his technical wizardry, you could make him a strong sociopath who talks little and broods a lot, or you could even take it in a comedic direction and make him the foil to a zany tag team partner. In other words, you cover for the guy's weaknesses. One thing you shouldn't do is call the guy boring on national television. That's exactly what Stone Cold Steve Austin did to Lance Storm during the invasion angle. It was a bizarre oversight. Stone Cold attacked the man instead of his character. And if Stone Cold himself thinks Storm is boring, then why exactly should the fans care about him either? It cemented a negative perception of showmanship over technical quality, and that preference for sports entertainment over wrestling continues even in today's WWE. Lance Storm should have been treated a whole lot better. Number 6, HAKUSHI. When Shinzaki debuted as HAKUSHI during the New Generation era, he was a breath of fresh air. The White Angel had an incredible presence, those Japanese characters were badass, and his martial arts kits looked fantastic. Also, he had a long undefeated streak that made him legit. But after his first major feud against Bret Hart, HAKUSHI turned face and he started doing backstage skips with the jobber known as Barry Horowitz. HAKUSHI's character was now a wide-eyed immigrant pupil, and Horowitz was teaching him about American culture, because that's what we all wanted to see. Around the same time, he also started to lose a lot, and everything that once made him mysterious and scary had been thrown in the garbage like an old towel. He left the company a short time afterwards without having won a single WWE title. This was an awful shame. Number 5, Doink the Clown. Here's a character that got progressively less interesting as the years went on. When Doink first debuted with Matt Osborne beneath the paint, he was a scary, evil clown. His entrance music turned creepy after several seconds, and Doink himself was sort of mean-spirited and slimy. He was allegedly based off Stephen King's Pennywise from It, and the first Doink was a bit more serial killer than comedian. But eventually, as always, the writers turned Doink face, and he just became a clown. He wasn't amusing, he wasn't subversive, he was literally just a flipping clown. And when Matt Osborne left the company, a succession of other wrestlers put on the makeup and just carried it on. Ironically, this defanged gimmick increased Doink's popularity, and the character actually became beloved by children rather than feared by them, but that still sucked. Various men claiming to be Doink still make the odd appearance here and there, and when they do, it's always as a babyface. Fans tend to forget the wasted potential of the original heel character, and maybe it's time to bring it back. A decrepit Doink with a Glasgow smile and a Joker-esque persona. The possibilities would be endless. Just don't make him a flipping clown. Number 4, MVP. When the WWE kayfabe signed MVP as the highest paid superstar in the history of the company, it was easy to hate the guy. He was every single outsized, arrogant, entitled jock douchebag that we ever had the displeasure of meeting. His entrance only reaffirmed this status with his inflatable tunnel epic pyro and encrusted bling hanging from his neck. But when WWE wanted to make him into a good guy, they destroyed his career beyond repair. The creative strategy was to have him lose a lot of matches, because that always works. MVP basically got ruined by everybody imaginable, sometimes due to bad luck, and sometimes due to his own incompetence. The intent was to tear him down and then build him back up as a fan favourite, but by the time they got around to the second part, his stock had fallen into the basement, and no one respected him or cared enough about his redemption. MVP was probably never going to enter the main event, but now he wasn't even suited for the mid-card. And soon afterwards, he was released. Number 3, Molly Holly. You know, for a company that claims to be an anti-bullying advocate, WWE sure has engaged in a lot of body shaming and bullying over the, well, decades. Take for instance Molly Holly, who had a great heel persona. She was a condescending, prim woman who resented how the Divas division was over-sexualized. And nowadays it's almost comical that such a sentiment could have been perceived as a heel stance, but hey, that's the late 90s for you. So what did WWE do after this? Did they make Molly a sympathetic villain? Did they point out her hypocrisy and create meaningful feuds and storylines for her? Nope. They just made a bunch of fat jokes implying that only an unattractive woman would dislike strip teasing. Between this, Picky James, and maybe depending on your taste what they've recently done with Nia Jax, WWE has a long way to go if they want to own their own anti-bullying moniker and be taken seriously as advocates. Number 2, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Although he was totally on board with it at the time and it was actually his idea, and by the way, I absolutely love it and wouldn't change it for anything, Austin came to regret his famous heel turn at WrestleMania 17. It was a story twist that looked much better on paper than it did in reality. Memorable booking doesn't always equate to smart booking, particularly in the long run. The biggest problem, and even Austin agreed with this, was that no one really wanted to boo him. Austin was the rebel who beat his boss's ass, and the fans loved him for this vicarious thrill he provided. Meanwhile, his two-man power trip heel angle with Triple H, where they would rush the ring and beat everyone with steel chairs, never got over, and it just confused the fans who still loved Austin. They didn't know whether to cheer or boo. And although Stone Cold did slowly become a face again, he was never as menacing or as anti-authority as he was in his prime. However, we do have to thank this period for the whole what thing, even though that annoys as many people as it pleases. And again, I love crazy Stone Cold. Number 1, Diamond Dallas Page. You know what doesn't get over with the fans? Sexual predators. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it's true. If your character is a sexual predator, it doesn't matter whether you're a heel or a face, the fans aren't going to be booing you for the right reasons. There's something about creepy behavior that hits way too close to home, and it isn't appropriate for sports entertainment. So of course, the WWE decided to take DDP, a WCW legend and a former champion, and turn him into a pervy stalker. Every week we saw grainy footage of Diamond Dallas Page spying on The Undertaker's wife, and he even built a shrine in her honor. Like that weird chick from Hey Arnold. Was this any way to treat a 3-time WCW champ? No, and during recent interviews, DDP has expressed regret that he didn't nix the angle. It was a hard lesson in thinking before signing on the dotted line. Due to injuries, Page wasn't under contract for very long, but ironically, he's done much more good outside of a WWE ring than inside of one. Both Scott Hall and Jake Roberts credit DDP with saving their lives via his yoga rehab program, and all you gotta do is Google the man to realize he's a real-life hero.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe below, and if you're looking for more content like this, then try a few things that are floating about around my ears. Might be fun. I can't promise it though, but it might be.